School Days, the original visual novel gone anime that has constantly wooed people for being consistently mediocre. The original visual novel was much too ambitious for its time, and even if everything excluding the writing was perfect, well, we'd still be stuck with an immature, unrealistic school teenage drama that falls short of making me actually give a damn about the characters. And the anime, written for shock value and literally an amalgamation of a bunch of the visual novel routes, the story it tells is somehow even worse. Let's talk about School Days.
そりゃ違うよ。
さよなら。誰なの？私も好きですよ。バカ！
Warning, this game deals with sexual assault, suicide, murder, and probably a lot of stuff that people don't want to hear about. You have been warned. Confession time. I literally only got this visual novel because I heard there was a yandere in it. And in a sadistic sort of way, I love the threat of being possibly murdered for every choice I make. If you come in with the same hopes and aspirations as me, you will be sorely disappointed. Immediately, I'm already confused. The banner says, and I quote, "In the school, the three guys met. The relation had been changed in the season and turned into 3 love stories." Not that you know it reads that because it's so damn blurry, even in the game, but what the hell does this mean? In doing further research, i.e. looking at the wiki for 5 seconds, I found the original version is, "In school life, 3 persons were always together. Our relation was broken on that day. The past never recovers no longer." Pardoning the translation issues, it makes a little more sense I guess, but you'll soon come to realize that this tagline is inaccurate. Anyway, let's start from the top. Our main protagonist is Makoto, the classic innocent virgin schoolboy who actively sneaks pictures of girls on the train. He seems reasonably mannered besides the thing I just mentioned, if not a bit thick-skulled. But I mean, he is a teenage boy in Japan, and from what I've learned from visual novels and anime, all teenage boys in Japan are like this. P.S. Makoto means truth. Keep this in mind for later, because it's fucking bullshit. More specifically, Makoto likes Kotonoha, a student he's had his eyes on since she recently transferred. She is quiet, intelligent, and will mostly be resistant to Makoto's attempts of sexual assault in the not too distant future until she basically becomes a slut for some reason. Yeah. Finally, we have Sakai. Sakai is a girl who has had a crush on Makoto unbeknownst to him for quite a while. And luckily for her, she finally gets to sit beside him in their class's new seating arrangement. Makoto finds that this girl talks too much and is generally annoying, but when she befriends Kotonoha and offers to help set Makoto up with her, he quickly changes his outlook on Sakai. And so it would seem our story has begun. P.S. I skipped a bunch of main characters. If you see a girl that looks relevant, just assume she either likes Makoto, has a scene where Makoto sexually assaults her, or cheats on Sakai or Kotonoha with her. I guess all those things can be true. But anyway, story time. The story begins with Makoto pseudo-stalking a random girl on the train whom we soon find to be Kotonoha. Something about a phone charm where if you have a picture of the person you like for 3 weeks and no one sees it, fate would have it that you'll be together. Of course, Makoto isn't that lucky. Sakai sees it and offers to help set up Makoto with her. Sakai befriends Kotonoha. They all start hanging out together with the undertone of awkward high school romance between Makoto and Kotonoha, with a secretly jealous Sakai. The 2 lovebirds go on a date, Makoto touches her hand with his hand, and then Kotonoha touches his face with her hand. Hard, not in the good way. It's established fairly early on that Kotonoha hates anything sexual or even being touched, and while, trust me, this idealism of her does not hold, she hates every second of it. From here, there are a lot of branching paths, obviously, and the story completely changes depending on where you go. I'm going to cover just my favorite endings in a bit, but basically, school festival, which you spend with whatever girl you're currently going for, Taisuke looking for a girlfriend at said festival, which you'll get depending on the girl you are already going for, drama escalates, characters get screwed over one way or another by Makoto and his cheating ways, and some way, somehow Makoto always gets the girl, unless our 2-star heroines feel like getting blood on their hands. Before my favorite endings though, let's talk about the mechanics and presentation. The actual gameplay of School Days is really weird. The main interface is literally just a video player of sorts, and you watch it like an anime. That's right folks, this is the main gimmick of School Days, in that it is basically a choose-your-own-story anime. I mean, if you couldn't tell by now. Choices are occasionally made throughout the episodes, and eventually an ending is found based on what your choices were. It's important to note that there is a choice to not make a choice, because some routes require this. A lot of the times I found the choices seem innocent enough, but can lead to really unpleasant consequences, with some choices being more obvious than others. As well, choices have an effect on the affection meter, either favoring Kotonoha or Sakai depending on your decisions. Funnily enough, the game doesn't seem to expect you to go hard into one girl's choices, because if you do, the bar UI literally breaks. Solid, guys. It's also important to note, while this is partially important for where the route goes, it has no effect on the ending. There are plenty of endings without these two girls being involved. One thing I'll give this game is that it has a nice looking route screen where you can see how your choices make the story branch off. It does not, however, tell you the episode names, the endings, or really anything about each scene within it though, so don't expect to be able to use it as a sort of guide or anything. The whole looks and talks like an anime is pretty cool for about an hour, and then you see the real weakness in this system. Everything is just rigid. Realistically, every character has like 4 or 5 different faces they make at most, and because of this, a lot of the time it doesn't convey proper emotion. Of course, many scenes have special one-of animations, but if this occurs, either A, something crazy is about to happen, B, an ending will occur, or, most likely, C, you'll proceed with sexual intercourse with girl X. Fill in X with whatever girl is within 10 feet of Makoto. And I have to mention this, what is with these zoomed out scenes? Like, I get it is for alternate camera angles to keep things different, but no one talks, moves, and nothing about it is alive. And it's kinda like 3D-ish, and some of our main characters don't even look right. These stills can be shown for over 10 seconds, and you're basically just stuck with dialogue. I'd much prefer the 4 stiff facial animations than this garbage. Long story short, most of the characters suck. Makoto is a cheating douchebag, almost no matter how you play him. Taisuke on the outside looking like the Tsunohara of this game, except his extremely sexual deviant side and lack of empathy leads to many situations which I would classify as rape. Sakai is either depressed, or trying to coerce Makoto to choose her over Kotonoha, and the countless other characters with their own motives, likewise of Sakai, are no better. Honestly, despite Kotonoha's crazy forceful side, you can't really blame her, because she constantly gets screwed over. And thus, I say, I have 4 favorite endings, and they are all the bad endings because they are more interesting than most of the other ones. May we commence. Makoto finally chooses Sakai and ignores Kotonoha. Sakai's friends bully Kotonoha a whole bunch, but she still ignorantly believes in her love with Makoto. She then heads to his house and is let in by Makoto's mother, before said mother leaves. Makoto brings Sakai back, and Kotonoha hides while she listens to the sound of silence and sex. She steals a key for some reason, and just keeps coming back to hear the sound of Makoto's sweet release. Eventually, out on the balcony, she reads a funny joke on 4chan and just can't stop laughing. Completely unrelated, the next day, she confronts Makoto and Sakai on the bridge and slits Sakai's throat. The end. Makoto knew his feelings for Sakai early on, but nonetheless he has sex with Kotonoha at the school festival, which secretly recorded Makoto's lack of refrain. Kotonoha realizes he can basically seduce Makoto and constantly engages in sexual encounters, including a handjob on an extremely loaded train. Sakai sees the secretly recorded footage and breaks up with Makoto for all of 5 seconds before they reconcile their relations, much to Kotonoha's disdain. Kotonoha then proclaims they'll never be happy as she jumps off a roof, splattering the sidewalk with pieces of her brain. But let's turn off Kotonoha's yandere scattered brain for a moment. The girl needs some rest. Makoto decides to date Kotonoha, but Sakai offers to let him use her body for training. Eventually they stop, and Sakai dates Taisuke, but she is borderline depressed with him. Sakai declares that she wants Makoto again, and Makoto decides he loves Sakai. They reconcile, but Kotonoha reveals that Sakai is actually pregnant, and because of the time frame, it is likely that it's Taisuke's. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs, as Makoto again leaves because he thinks Sakai is trying to manipulate him. Makoto decides, finally, to be with Kotonoha before... Right, so basically the same thing as the last ending, except Sakai ends up disappearing, and Makoto and Kotonoha are very happy together during this time. Kotonoha becomes pregnant, and they happily talk about their plans at the beach as the sun sets. Unfortunately, Makoto, omae wa mou shitteru. Kotonoha heads home in advance, and Makoto just stays at the beach for a bit. Eventually, Sakai appears behind him, and she ain't there for a hug. She violently stabs Makoto, whom then goes on to tell Sakai how worried he was about her. Sakai screams no and runs away, whilst Makoto bleeds out to the rhythm of the setting sun, or something poetic like that. And thus, our story ends on a beautiful whim. Or at least it would, if they didn't make a shoddy anime out of it. I intend to talk in depth about visual novel animes real soon, and while this one actually goes against the grain in how it ends, it's still mediocre. So the anime is basically the school days visual novel if they shoved every route into one. Instead of Makoto periodically cheating on Kotonoha with Sakai, or on Sakai with whomever, Makoto basically is constantly cheating on Sakai and Kotonoha, whichever is his girlfriend for that episode, with literally almost all of the female cast, and even eventually random side characters. Now no, this was a guy who was scared of holding a girl's hand and kissing, and in about a 2-week period, he goes nuts blowing his nut off. The general premise is the same, with Makoto briefly dating Kotonoha before realizing he loves Sakai, before doing a 180 turn back to Kotonoha after Sakai won't talk to him for cheating about 68 times. Obviously, everything here is animated better than the visual novel because it's an anime, but honestly they should have just gone with higher quality, i.e. better writing and better visuals in the first place instead of the route quantity. Half of the routes are basically the same, though I can't say for all of them because I really couldn't be bothered. Anyway, back to the anime. As the story I've already experienced with much distress begins to wind down yet again, the way the anime ends is actually hilarious to me. It combines half of the bad ends. Sakai is pregnant again and tries to convince Makoto to be with her after apparently forgiving him for some reason. Unfortunately, Makoto has already returned to Kotonoha and has no plans to agree to be with Sakai. Despite this, he agrees to meet with her at his apartment. Of course, it's probably obvious what happens next. Sakai distracts Makoto with a long text message and then stabs him. Sakai runs away in fear, unsure of what to do next before getting a message from Makoto. Of course, it's not hard to deduct that it was Kotonoha, but they meet on the rooftop. Kotonoha shows Sakai Makoto's severed remains that she harvested for some reason before slitting her neck with her machete. She also cuts into Sakai's stomach to check if she was actually pregnant. Not the most practical way to do this, but it turns out she wasn't. Our anime ends with Kotonoha hugging what's left of Makoto on a boat in the middle of God knows where, happily ever after. The writing is subpar most of the time. The visual novel attempting to be a choose-your-own-adventure anime was a really cool concept, but ended up being rather rigid. And honestly, the more I think about this game in anime, the more depressed I become. Maybe I'd recommend it if you're into games that focus on school life and sex, and maybe I'd recommend it if you're still early into your visual novel journey. It's certainly not the worst thing out there, but I wouldn't pay full price for it either. I've already written 5 pages, and this video is probably going to be like 20 minutes long, so I bid my fans adieu. I apologize for being gone for so long, and if you subscribed in the last half year when I've been inactive, thank you. There will be more content to come.